confidence is not a fluke. Confidence is a choice, and it begins with your mindset. In this podcast, you will get all sorts of mindset tools to help you reduce self criticism and overwhelm while increasing your empowerment and courage. I am passionate about helping women decrease their mental drama and increase their self awareness while leaving behind all the perfectionist tendencies. We do so by empowering ourselves one episode at a time. I am Olga, your host, former therapist, life coach, blissfully an IVF mother, and this is the Journey to Happy podcast. All right, beautiful people, welcome to another episode of the Journey to Happy podcast. I'm very happy to be talking about out of guilt. And I'm very happy because I coach women, and women tend to feel guilty a lot, more than we need to, more than we want to. And it's time that we put an end to guilt mode. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will say it's simply my way of thinking. I'm just going to offer you thoughts that I have that help me. I can honestly say guilt is not a feeling I have. I've trained my brain, which I will teach you how. I trained my brain to say no to guilt. I don't feel it. I don't generate it with my thoughts. Okay, so let's just begin by defining guilt. I look it up on the dictionary, and this is what it says. Guilt is responsibility for having done something wrong, and especially something against the law, or a feeling of shame or regret that comes as a result of bad conduct. Okay, so let's have that clear as we go through this episode. Guilt is breaking the law because we did something wrong against it, or it is a feeling of shame and regret as the result of bad conduct. So, who defines bad conduct in our everyday life? And what are the laws that we're breaking? And this is when I'm going to dive deep into mindset and why I love coaching mindset. My clients probably hear me say this every day. This is why I love mindset coaching. I have more than 100 reasons why I love coaching people through mindset. But this is a fun one because guilt is so limiting and it's such an unpleasant emotion to have that is created entirely by ourselves that it's fun to just coach you out of it. So I want to come back to that definition of bad conduct and the breaking of the law. And I want to bring you to a very simple concept of how the brain operates. The brain operates in segments where you first build a belief. Okay. And so I believe I am a good human or I'm not good enough. And based on that belief, we are going to have like life rules that we live by that kind of go hand in hand with that belief. So let's call that belief the law. And that law has like ramifications in which you can apply it and behaviors that you want to see based on that law. And so, what defines bad conduct or breaking of the law is your own judgment when you say, hey, according to our law, aka believe that you're not good enough. If you have a moment of looking in the mirror and saying to yourself, my God, I look beautiful, feel guilty because you feel beautiful. And then he's going to tell you, how could you feel good about having such a beautiful body when your sister has such a terrible body? Just making this up. So I want to offer that the laws that you're breaking are self created, they come from beliefs you have. And the bad conduct, it's as judged by yourself. You're the one who says this is bad conduct. Okay. So I kind of wrote down some of the reasons I hear people feel guilty, my clients, and then I'm gonna tell you, we're gonna break it down. I'm gonna explain to you how this comes from a belief, which is a life rule that we live by, and how we can change that. So, guilt is the result of a thought error. Guilt on its own is a feeling generated by a thought error, an erroneous thought. Okay. Anytime you're feeling guilt, you can assume that your brain is thinking that thought that is a mistake. For example, I'm going to give you the examples of thoughts that I thought about that I've heard my clients tell me of when they feel guilty. But so let's just go back to thought error. Thought error is a way of thinking that seems real, but is a mistake. If you're thinking that way, it's a mistake, and therefore it's going to generate a feeling. And so all feelings are generated by your thoughts. But when you're feeling guilty, I want you to know for a fact that you must have had an error, a mistake in your way of thinking. So I'm going to just briefly mention things that I've heard from my clients this week. I feel guilty for not calling my dad at Father's Day. I feel guilty for not having spent the weekend with my son. I feel guilty for taking time off work when I'm mentally stressed, leaving my team to do my work. I feel guilty saying no. So I'm going to break them down. I'm not going to break them down all of them, but I will select a few. So we define by conduct and we also define the rules by which we live our lives. And those many times happen at an unconscious level or they're learned by others. I call them the house rules because my body is my house, my rules, and they happen unconsciously. So maybe the person who feels guilty for not calling her dad lives by a house rule, I believe, that says a good daughter calls her dad on every single Father's Day, regardless of what kind of relationship she has with her dad. And that happened unconsciously, or maybe she learned it by others. Maybe her mom had an awful relationship with her dad, but she still called him every Father's Day. So every grown up has to, at some point in time, review and recreate the rules that they live by. Rules that are not based on anyone else's behaviors, like our parents, our grandparents, but on ourselves, and rules that make sense to who we are now. Rules that do not include mental errors. So for the person who says, I feel guilty not calling my Father's Day, I want you to ask yourself, did you forget or did you intend not to call? And if you did forget, was it because you were too happy doing nothing? You just escaped your mind? Or what was going on that day for you? Just bring some awareness when you are feeling guilty. Like, really notice that there's a thinking mistake. So we're trying to organize our thoughts to bring accuracy. So for the person who forgot to call her dad or his dad, imagine that literally he's traveling to Australia and they're one day late, and so that he didn't think of the day. He might or she might have a house rules that says you cannot make mistakes, and therefore making the mistake that Sunday was actually Monday in their country, and so therefore they missed the day, was a mistake, an honor mistake. And if they could change that rule for something else, like I can make mistakes, that's okay. They would not feel guilty, right? Like they will have a more accurate awareness. Hey, Olga here, and I'm here to invite you to join me in 5 days of taking you from self critical to self confident by changing the way you speak to yourself. Your inner dialogue has everything to do with your confidence, whether you have it or you don't. And it all comes back to how we perceive ourselves and to the blockages that we might have internally to finally accept and value who we are as we are now. I have a very useful strategy that has been known to help many make that shift from critical to confident, and I want to share that invitation with you. So the waiting list is now open. You can go ahead and add your name, and by being in the waiting list, you get to be the first one notified when I open for registration. Also, you get some extra perks. So head over to the show notes, sign up for the waiting list, Detox the Mind. Talk to you guys soon. Okay, but for the person who also forgot to call her dad, if she was to ask herself, why? What was going on? Why? Or no, sorry, for the person who intended. Didn't forget, just I am not going to call my dad. But then I feel guilty. I want you to ask yourself, how come? How come I said I was not going to call him? Which was the case for my client. And my client said, I had a childhood of a lot of anxiety and abuse around my dad and his partners. And every time I call him or I visit him, even if it is the ones that one time a year, it's not without me going through a lot of anxiety, my child noticing it, my husband noticing, being a complete unpleasant moment. So she, whom I have the house rule that says, no matter what, you're going to call your dad, regardless of what it costs you, she was to change that house rule for saying, I will always choose what's in my best interest, even if that means not calling my dad on a special day. Well, I bet you anything, she will feel a little less guilty of not calling. In fact, not guilty at all. So the questions to ask yourself when you catch yourself feeling guilty is, what thinking errors did I have? And it could be like you should always call no matter what. In fact, if it starts with a should, you can immediately say this is a thinking error. I dive into all the types of thinking errors inside Reset Your Mindset, by the way. There's a whole module on them because I want my clients to clearly identify the different types and understand that many of their thoughts have thinking errors, and therefore it's easier to change them because we know there's a mistake in that way of thinking. So when you do catch yourself with like a limiting way of thinking that is leading you to guilt, ask yourself, what rule am I going by and what new rule do I want to create? So for the person who said, I feel guilty taking time off work when I'm mentally stressed and leaving my team to do my work, I have heard this one more times than I can count because they have a house rule that says you will always show up to work no matter what is going on in your life. And often that is the same rule that brought them to being mentally stressed. Because when they were having a mild cold, they didn't stay home. Because when they were having too much work, they didn't take a break. And they also don't believe in teamwork. Giving work to my team is unforgivable. That's another house rule that they have. So if that is you, ask yourself, what new rule do I want to create that aligns with who I am and who I want to be? I feel guilty not spending time with my son on a weekend. It's because you probably have a house rule that says once you become a mom, you will never have time for yourself ever again alone. That's selfish. So I want you to create a new rule that says great parenting lies in my ability to fill up my own cup. How will you feel about taking time to yourself? So that's essentially how you can begin to break down the thoughts and the beliefs that you have that lead you to feeling guilty. Good news, only you can bring yourself to feeling guilty. Also, great news, only you can change that. And you do it by following this process that I just told you. So, next time you feel guilty, ask yourself, what thought was I having? And then ask yourself, what was going on with me? Where does this thought come from? What must I be believing? What are the house rules that I'm living by that leads to this kind of thinking? And what new rule do I need to create that aligns with who I am? Because sometimes our parents like make us think that the best way of thinking is this way, and we're like, yes, a good daughter should always call her dad on Father's Day, no matter what. But maybe we've done a lot of self work and we've realized that nothing that costs our mental well being is worthy of doing. And we strongly feel about it that way. And so we need a new house rule, one that differs from the one that our parents taught us, because that one doesn't align with who we are. Okay. Now, I also wanted to talk about the thought that I often get when I present this inside Reset. People will say, "But what about when others make me feel guilty? My mom gives me guilt trips." We talk about this all the time. And yes, inducing guilt in others is a form of manipulation that many of us use to get the results we want. However, I want to make it very clear, no one can make you feel anything that you are not agreeing with. In other words, if your mom makes you feel guilty, it's because you agreed with that house rule that this is a good reason to feel guilty about. So, what new rule do you want to have about this thought that others make you feel guilty? Personally, I have one that says guilt is a feeling only I can generate with my own thoughts. When others express their feelings of disappointment to me, I can hold space for them and I can sit in that discomfort. So when others make you feel guilty, if that's the rationale you're going with, like, no, but others make me feel guilty. How do I get out of that? Because they make me feel guilty. Stop pointing the finger out. The moment you point the finger outside of yourself, you are giving up on the things you can control. So grab control, my friend. Notice, okay, this person, when they talk, I feel guilty. What thoughts am I having when this person talks that lead me to feeling guilty? Where is the thinking error? You make your own house rules, but the first step always is awareness. Without awareness, you have no idea, right? And so guilty is one of the gifts of guilt that it does make you aware. Because you're so uncomfortable. You're like, oh my God, why am I feeling so guilty? I don't like this feeling. I don't want to feel this way. And guilt leads to anxiety, to overthinking, because it all comes from a thinking error, from a house rule that no longer agrees with who you are, does not fit you. I feel guilty saying no means you have a rule that says I always have to say yes. People always have to like me, and how they only like me if I say yes. But what if you start thinking people really respect me because they know I can and I will say no when I mean it. Oh, what if your house rule is like mine? I say no and I mean it. That's it. There is no attachment to what saying no means, other than if I feel like saying no, I will definitely, you can count on me saying no because I meant it. I feel guilty or bad saying no to helping a friend who's asking for my help, but my plate is so full. How helpful are you truly when your plate is full? What house rule are you living by that this is making you feel guilty? That you are superwoman, superman, that your needs matter less when other people have needs too? The fun part about this work, guys, is that you get to recognize the house rules that you're living by, and you're getting to say, this doesn't make sense to me. I'm going to change them for something that does make sense. And in doing so, your life will change significantly. I promise you. I'm doing this with the feeling guilty, but you can apply with the feeling anxious, with the feeling angry, with the feeling jealousy. What are the rules that you're living by, and are they sustainable? Do you like them? Do you need new house rules? And lastly, I always have thought this, and I share this with my clients. So I'm now going to share with you. I believe that guilt is the absence of gratitude. So inviting gratitude when you're feeling guilty could be a really good strategy to start shifting things around in the way you're thinking. So for example, if I was to go back to the example of I feel guilty I didn't call my dad on Father's Day. And if you were to ask yourself, what did I do instead? Well, instead I was celebrating my husband, who's a phenomenal dad, with my son. It was such a beautiful moment. How about spending some time in gratitude that you have chosen a better husband than your dad was to you, that you have given your child a phenomenal dad, that you get the opportunity to celebrate a healthy, normal Father's Day with a healthy, normal father that you've chosen for your child. That had you called your dad and you'd have been anxious mode, you would have missed what you just experienced. That was so nice. Or for the person who's feeling guilty because she's gonna take time off because she's not feeling mentally well and she's leaving work for her team. How about turning into gratitude that you get to take time off when you're not feeling well, that you get to have a team that can actually supply the work and so the company can function, right? How amazing that you don't work in isolation, that somebody else can pick up the pieces so that when you come back to work when you're feeling better, you don't have so much to catch up on. Or the person who feels guilty saying, no, how about turning into gratitude? My God, I've grown the boundaries within myself to speak for myself, even when it gets difficult. I am far more confident. So, gratitude to me is one great way of shifting our mindset around guilt specifically. I almost said grief because it's also true for grief. I actually feel gratitude is the remedy for everything in life. That if we can bring our mind to gratitude, we can so easily shift our mindset from a negative, dark, yucky place to a lighter, fun, light, and easy. So that's what I want to leave you with. This is a shorty, but a goodie. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you have the tools now to get out of guilt mode. And if guilt is a recurring feeling for you, you must have really strong beliefs that disguise guilt as something good, something that brings you benefit. And I really want you to use your analytical mind and reflective mind to come up with new rules. Be curious. This can be really fun work. I work definitely I help my clients get rid of limiting beliefs so that they can dive into this work with more mental clarity and with ease. And this is something that we truly mastered through my coaching program. So if this is something that you feel you would like to have support and guidance and maybe fast forward some of the time that you might take on your own, join us. Our next reset opens. We start September 29th, but doors will open earlier than that. And you can even begin on September 12th with a 5-day live coaching of detoxifying the mind and just sort of creating a nice foundation to later reset your mindset. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I'll catch you guys next Monday.